Hopefully this will be better. Let me go back. He promised to bring the Mayan skull, and again, we had another session with it, and it was given to me personally to work with for a weekend with very interesting results. Okay, to summarize, the psychometry sessions basically corroborated each other. The skull was declared to be the same as a computer or library, able to store information from. Summarize, the psychometry sessions basically corroborated each other. The skull was declared to be the same as a computer or library, able to store information from the mind to be released, as Vocal said, by breath or by sound. Information could be released to anyone who tapped into it. We also felt, I had a couple of sessions later on with the priest, and he corroborated that the mind skull was used for healing. So then I got involved with these two people, the priest and his agent. Unfortunately, it didn't turn out as well as I would have liked. They were interested in selling this item. So a lot of time was spent trying to set up sales with people who might be interested, but in between that, I did some interesting work with it. I found the skull to be fascinating. It was definitely a storage bank of information. My last contact with the Mayan skull was March of 1980. We were then told it had disappeared from the area. I have since found out that it was put on loan to a lawyer in Texas, and that's the last I've heard of it. Our contact degenerated because they were more interested in selling it than in the psychic or scientific research. I heard from them for a while. Now, to go on to the next item, I left Rosicrucian Park and was no longer involved with the research department. However, I stayed in contact with the man who was the agent. Then I got involved with him a couple years later in another business operation. In the course of that business venture, which failed, he told me that he'd been involved with the priest again and that there was another skull. Would I be interested? Certainly. Now, this happened in November of 1982. So I went to his house and there was another crystal skull. He told me it was amethyst. And though I had never heard there was an amethyst skull, according to all the literature, there was the Mitchell Hedges skull and the other skull that's. And though I had never heard there was an amethyst skull, according to all the literature, there was the Mitchell Hedges skull and the other skull that is in the British Museum. And this one, the Mayan skull, which are all clear quartz. Let me stop here for a minute. Because did you hear me say it's in the British Museum? Now listen to this. People do not, this is from the second book, The Mystery of the Crystal Skulls. People do not really need to see the skull. They just need to know that it exists and that it is there. Please let it be good enough for you to just know that it is there. Take comfort in knowing that it is there and that it is fulfilling its purpose and that it is being looked out for carefully. Leave it, be it like the mountains, the trees, and the wind and the rain. Listen to this. He added that when the crystal skulls are put in a glass cases in museum, they lose all their power. That when the crystal skulls are put in a glass cases in museum, they lose all their power. Then he went on to say he would like to tell us a story that he had heard from his grandfather. I'll read that later. Let's jump back. And I'm jumping back because the fact that the British Museum might have still, again, remember, this is 1982, still have a crystal skull in their cases, that's actually crap. So they basically, it's almost like wiping the file. It would have to be reactivated by the sun, the moon, and the electromagnetic current of the earth. The first thing you'd have to do to reactivate the skull was to, I'm getting this download, I'm not reading this, I'm telling you, would be to put it on the ground for 30 days. The ground on the earth to get the electromagnetic current from where it came from, right, we're assuming from the earth, right? But then connecting with the various cycles of the moon and the various cycles of the sun. That would be important. And it would have to be, I'm being told, in spring. Okay. There was no mention of an amethyst skull in any literature or in any psychometry done with other crystal skulls. I got involved with the amethyst skull again for the same personal reason, but the agent wanted to have it sold. Fucking greed, man. We made contacts. That's why I contacted Fr. Nick Nocerino, which you and I read about him yesterday when he found that skull, and it took him 7 hours or 8 hours, something like that, to dig up the skull. Like, the skulls find him, they message him, and here he is digging with like 4 other guys somewhere in Mexico. That's magical faith, okay, in action. And there they hit a rock, and they hit an underground temple, and boom, they found the skull that Nick Nisarino held onto. Remember, these people are in their 40s and 50s. They're probably dead now. So where the fuck are these skulls would be my question, right? And remember, all these books I'm reading are from the 1980s. Where are these skulls? But anyway, let's continue. Nick had a session with this skull. Marcel Vogel had another session with this amethyst skull, which he mentioned in the last book that I read in the last episode. And the amethyst skull was given to me for a week. In that week, I arranged for groups of various people to see the skull through my contact with the Rosicrucian and the psychic crystal people I knew. I arranged as many as 20 or 30 different psychometry sessions with the amethyst skull. For me, that was to be the crystal people I knew. I arranged as many as 20 or 30 different psychometry sessions with the amethyst skull. For me, that was to be the most extraordinary skull of them all. Of the two I've experienced, I had much more affinity to the amethyst skull. It was a tremendous thing. It was older than the Mayan skull. Again, to summarize, the psychometry material, the amethyst skull was made by some process as the Mayan skull. We can go into more detail about the manufacturing later, but it was also an energy information storage receptacle. Vogel felt that the Mayan crystal skull was a language decoder, that it had the ability to translate ancient languages into modern thought. People could use it as a computer in that respect. We felt more that the amethyst skull, that it was just a general energy transfer device, a storage of tremendous amounts of information. Based on our psychometry sessions, we felt that the amethyst skull is the older of the two crystal skulls. In fact, the priest told us that the amethyst was not grown on this planet. It might have been shaped into a skull on this planet, but the crystal is not from this planet. If you wanted to associate a civilization with it, I'd say Atlantis. I'd say at least 20,000, 50,000, or even 100,000 years old. When it was shaped into a skull, I can't give an accurate estimate, but it's very ancient and many, many different civilizations have handled it. It's gone through Atlantis, Egypt, felt it was in the hands of Alexander the Great. There's even a story that one of the reasons the Crusaders went to the Middle East was to get this crystal skull, as well as the research for the Holy Grail. This crystal skull was involved with the Rosicrucian in the Middle Ages and with the Knights Templars. Now, the Knights involved with the Rosicrucian in the Middle Ages and with the Knights Templars. Now, the Knights Templars weren't just warrior monks. They were mystics. That's why they were slaughtered on Friday the 13th. I'm trying to remember, it was 1300 or 1301. I'm trying to remember the date. By the Pope of that era, the Roman Pope, I forgot his name, and the French king. When you go to the Chartres Cathedral outside of Paris, using Solomon's sacred geometry, and it was created by the Knights Templars. And they are in reverence to the Black Madonna, also known as the Blue Madonna in this case. According to the in reverence to the Black Madonna, also known as the Blue Madonna in this case. According to the age and the last time the amethyst skull emerged, 10. Editor's note, we have no confirmation of this. It then disappeared and later reappeared in the hands of the Mayan priests, got passed down, and now it's here. But it seems to be a catalyst in many great civilizations for thousands and thousands of years. Another item of information we felt came through was that this amethyst skull is a trigger for the other skulls. Yeah, they work together. I'm going to back up for a minute. This skull is a trigger for the other skulls. Yeah, they work together. I'm going to back up for a minute, okay? When I used to, and this is, if you're a man, please sit down and listen, okay? Because it's important. If you're a woman, you're going to really want to hear this. When I used to do womb healing circles, knowing the power of crystals, because I'd read these books before, by the way. I read these books when I was in my 30s, so I was fully aware of the power of crystals, crystal skulls, this and that, yeah. And so all of them were, when I used to do the circles in meditations or what have you, and work, womb healing work, all of them, I would have them wear only carnelian crystals, right? It makes sense, carnelian, right? And then for me to activate them, I would wear an obsidian. Do you understand? And that, more downloads and so forth. So it's not, so women are particularly can use their womb with the right crystals. Be careful when you buy a yoni crystal, okay? It's not something you kick rocks and look for the best deal. You got to really be careful, okay? Because there's a lot of weird materials coated on this shit. That's on the side note. But anyway, and I think it's important to say that because I know for a fact, and don't ask me how I know, I just know, the unspoken knowing, that in the ancient world, high priestesses would use their yoni, their womb, to activate crystalline. That in the ancient world, high priestesses would use their yoni, their womb, to activate crystals, to activate changes, to activate recollection, and to activate massive healing. For example, I just got an image of a young woman being activated in her first menses. I also, an older woman, sick. She's sick. She's got the big C, and she's in the middle of the circle, and everyone's activating their womb to her womb to heal her, using the crystal as a conduit, as a force, of a trigger. In psychometry, we came to the conclusion that there are maybe 12 skulls, a rose quartz, a smoky quartz conduit, as a force of a trigger. In psychometry, we came to the conclusion that there are maybe 12 skulls, a rose quartz, a smoky quartz, a lapis, a clear amethyst, which Nick was looking for, and several more. We feel that there's a circle of 12 skulls, and maybe this one, amethyst, sits in the middle of as the 13th and triggers all of them. A woman had a vision of this and actually drew a picture of all of them. There was even an opal skull, which would be an incredible thing because opal is very hard to carve. I have no way of saying yes or no on these ideas of impression. I also feel that all of these crystal skulls are supposed to be here in the United States and that more will come out. I have lost contact with the priests and I have a sort of falling out with these people, which I'd rather not go into. Again, there seemed to be greed involved, and that is why they've lost control of the amethyst crystal skull now. Joshua, thus, based upon your work with these two skulls, what would you say is the purpose of the crystal skulls? You said they're computers, but how are they utilized and how will they be used in the future? Steve, well, they seem to be coming from higher intelligence. Whether they are extraterrestrial or interdimensional, there seems to be beings attached to these skulls, which may not necessarily be from another planet, but may be occupying this space just in a different dimension. They seem to be here to aid humanity as a catalyst to speed up evolution. In other words, the information which can be tapped into these skulls is endless. I would like to work with them continuously because the information coming out is incredible. The skulls are here because humanity is at a critical age right now. We're at a point where we're going into the so-called new age. There's so much interest in psychic things and tremendous interest in crystals, crystal technology, and application. The skulls are here to aid those who can connect with and contact them. There definitely seems to be beings involved. I could show you drawings of them. The beings have been drawn, fit into alleged extraterrestrial fourth encounters. They are very similar. It's amazing. All the correlations involved. We definitely have the feeling of a presence involved, that something was over amazing. All the correlations involved. We definitely have the feeling of a presence involved, that something was overseeing us when we were working with the skulls. The skulls themselves seem to be personalities, to be beings, yet there seemed to be other things outside of them connected as well. Personalities, to be beings, yet there seemed to be other things outside of them connected as well. There was always the feeling, as you mentioned about the Mitchell Hesse skull, of the amethyst skull being very loving and gentle because it has the particular qualities of amethyst itself, which is healing and gently balancing stone, and the skull seemed to do just that. A brief anecdote. Amethyst means without drunkenness in Greek. The Greeks named the stone this because they believed that amethyst would drunkenness. A perfect story to go along with that is about a woman who has some fame as the earthquake lady, Clarissa Bernard, known for predicting earthquakes. She came in and had a session with the skull. The man she's now married to came along, and he had a bad hangover. After 10 minutes of handling the amethyst skull, he reported that his hangover was totally gone, and he didn't know he had a bad hangover. After 10 minutes of handling the amethyst skull, he reported that his hangover was totally gone, and he didn't know that this is a property of amethyst. A lot of healing went on with the skull. The amethyst skull seemed to have the ability to draw illnesses and bring them to a head. It brought on healing crisis, which could be seen as doing harm, and people could misinterpret that what was happening and say it was causing problems. But it caused a crisis in a situation, then affected healing. It's kind of like drawing out pus, right? Drawing out pus. You want to draw it out and you want to drain it. So people who are not conscious, who say, "Well, I mean, it caused me illness," is actually it's drawing out what's going to collapse anyway, which is going to create massive illness in the body. So it looks like to me it's drawing out what's submerged, which is going to create massive illness in the body. So it looks like to me it's drawing out what's submerged, right, in the body, and it's drawing out to finally eradicate and healing it once and for all, to uproot it, for a better lack of a way to explain it. So the skulls are definitely here to aid us. There's no doubt. And again, I would say that there are other intelligences involved in control of the skulls. The priest told me specifically their presence involved in controlling the skulls. So, okay, so my download that I'm having right now is that these crystal skulls, okay, that may have gone, like I said, they're in the museums, they're in the hands of billionaires. There are, yes, they're saying there are archangels that we don't know the names of these archangels. And that's what I'm being told, that are making sure the crystal skulls go into the right hands. Okay. Hence these greedy Mayan priests and this agent trying to sell it. It's being divinely guided to the right people like Steve and Joshua and those people. But when it decides to sell it to some nefarious character, it shuts down. The doors shut down. Okay. It will not activate itself because the caretaker of that crystal skull, an archangel or an entity of that, titanic power, will not allow it. It's kind of like having a computer and you're out of electricity. Your power was shut off. It's not going to happen. You got to pay your bill. What's your bill? Well, karmically, have you paid your bill? No? Oh, okay. Well, you're not having access to it. You can hire all the psychics you want, Mr. Billionaire, but you're not going to have access to any of its knowledge. This is not for you. And what happens with a billionaire when they die or when they get bored with it because nothing's coming up? They sell it, or they give it away, or it's stored away and eventually found to the right hands. Joshua, this seems to correspond with what is written in the book Quartz Crystals, A Celestial Point of View by Lavender, which also talks about crystal brotherhood existing in various portions of the galaxy that has knowledge of doorways to various dimensions in space. The skulls may serve as interdimensional link-ups. My feeling is that the Mitchell Hedges skull represents some kind of a higher level development, if this is the correct term. I'm not clear yet on exactly how the Mayan and the amethyst skulls were created. Now, we feel that the clear quartz crystal that are in the Museum of London, England, and Paris, France, were probably an attempt to the clear quartz crystal that are in the Museum of London, England, and Paris, France, were probably an attempt to reproduce a crystal skull such as a Mitchell Hedges skull, and they may have been carved. Steve, maybe. I think just the smaller ones were carved by the Aztec, but as the priest told me, the Mayans did not carve any of them. Joshua, right. We believe the amethyst and Mayan skulls were not carved. They're too smooth. Frank Dorland said to us once that he could take the British skull. Right. We believe the amethyst and Mayan skulls were not carved. They're too smooth. Frank Dorland said to us once that he could take the British skull and personally finish it so that it would look very nice and so forth. But in the case of the Mitchell Hedges skull, with its movable jaw, no one seems to know how the creators duplicated a human jaw in crystal so precisely. There's another spiritual channel we've talked to about the skull who also said that they were able to duplicate almost everything just by carving, but they could not reproduce the jaw. Very similar to how we can't reproduce the pyramids of Giza. We cannot. They've tried again and again. Steve, I can only speak about the skulls I've been involved with, and I have only a superficial knowledge of the Mitchell Hedges skull. However, through talking to Marcel Vogel and with others who've experienced it, there was a lot done with Mitchell Hedges skull. The Mayans did many dark things. There were a lot of scare tactics used with Mitchell Hedges, etc. So it has a checkered history. There's no doubt of its power from the photographs he showed me. Dorland said in the book, The Crystal Skull. It's full of thousands of prisms, which can make tremendous lighting effects. Joshua, yes, because it's totally clear. Before the research team that went to Canada, started working with the skull was totally clear, Nick said. They had to psychically fog it to see things. He said that the two of you worked with them. They were already fogged up, and you had to clear them first before you could see images, pictures through scrying. We discussed scrying in the last episode I did. Okay, Steve, exactly. And the mind skulls does clear the more it works with someone who's attuned to it. The funny thing about the amethyst skull is that though it seems to be opaque, it does change color when affected by human consciousness. Now, listen, I'm going to tell you a story. My 8-year-old son had an amethyst cap. It does change color when affected by human consciousness. Now, listen, I'm going to tell you a story. My 8-year-old son had an amethyst cactus quartz crystal, and I had him meditate on it. I had him drop light codes into it. And within 40 minutes, my son had an amethyst cactus quartz crystal, and I had him meditate on it. I had him drop light codes into it. And within 45 minutes, yes, 8-year-olds can actually sit and focus, okay? If you direct them with something that's metaphysical or esoteric. And swear to God, that crystal started pulsing light. It was shiny. And he was like, Mom, look, it's shiny. Oh my God, look. And he had done it. So we're talking about crystal skulls here. But I've been talking with some depth about letting yourself get picked by a crystal, right? Letting these crystals come to you. And when they come to you, you don't say no. When they choose you, whether it's a shop or a fair or something like that, right? I don't mean fucking eBay. I don't mean that you are obsessed. You're having dreams of it. Okay? But for the most part, you are obsessed. You're having dreams of it. Okay? But for the most part, you have to meet it physically in the physical realm. Okay? And when it chooses you, accept the pact. The money will come. You know, the money will come. Or something else will be given to you in line. Just trust the process. The amethyst skull is slightly different in manufacture, and it's probably from two pieces that were fused together, while the others seem to be from solid pieces of quartz. The amethyst skull was made from a cluster. So there are two sides which are distinctively different. One side is a different color than the other, and they would change colors. There's a suture line that goes right through the top, which seems to divide it in half. Joshua, one of the things that I've experienced as a difference between the two skulls I've seen in person is that the amethyst skull also seems to have recorded a lot of the violence. As a difference between the two skulls I've seen in person is that the amethyst skull also seems to have recorded a lot of the violence and greed which was occurring around it. I feel that energy is still in the amethyst skull. I find the same when I view sides of the Mayan skull, whereas the Mitchell Hedges skull doesn't seem to retain this type of energy. Steve, that's funny because the Mitchell Hedges skull has the worst reputation of them all as the skull of doom. Supposedly people died around it from accidents. Even Mitchell Hedges himself said attempts were made on his life while he had the skull. So it has a dubious reputation. Joshua, perhaps it's because the Mitchell Hedges skull is more powerful. Steve, or perhaps it's been in the West too long, which can pollute it. Did you hear that? In the West too long, which can pollute it. But I could add something about the feeling of the amethyst skull. Let's pause for a minute. To pollute it. Just think for a minute. The West. What does it embody? We talked about greed. We talked about violence. Now, I'm not saying third world countries don't have violence. I'm not saying that they're corrupt. But what controls greed? What has the iron fist of greed? Which corrupts, which pollutes, which wages war and famine and argues the point. Capitalism. Capitalism in its form today, in the way it's been morphed into something where we think billionaires are, it's okay to be a trillionaire. It's okay to be a trillionaire and to walk down the street and to see a man with no legs, no fucking legs. I've seen it in Hong Kong. No legs. Their legs, their stumps wrapped in cloth, begging for coins or bills, whatever, begging. And this billionaire could literally change that person's life, and actually millions of people's lives, millions of people's lives, and chooses not to. It's a choice. It's a choice. I find that interesting. Choice. It's a choice. I find that interesting. Let me continue. Let me continue with that. All sorts of events seem to happen. Again, these things can be misinterpreted. These were events that could be said to have caused harm. People seem to pass away in your life when you're involved with these things. My mother passed away right after I was involved in the amethyst skull. The man who was the agent associated with the Mayan skull said that when he got it, his brother died in an automobile accident. So a lot of times people connect these calamities as being involved with the skulls. It could be just coincidences. No, I wouldn't say it's a coincidence. No. The download I'm getting from deaths is we keep connecting death as it's a loss, and it's not. Moldavite crystals are going to bring up chaos, not to fuck you up, but to clean you up. Okay, like the amethyst crystal drawing out illness from people, to heal it, to eradicate it. And so people dying suddenly like that it's kind of like a mercy, because it's time for them to move on to the next level. They're not trapped here. I'm just going to say it that way. And so they're not calamities. They're a release. Okay? They're a release to the next level of conscious awareness. Okay? Especially if his mother, for example, or this man's brother were so hell-bent on that the only reality was 3D. That type of stubbornness is not healthy. It actually creates psychosis. We've just seen it with the rapture. That's psychosis. They'll believe in that, right? They'll believe in lifting up in the air, but they won't believe that you can actually connect and see the dead from beyond the veils. And they're not dead. They're souls that drop their bodies. They're not the dead. They're the living. They're living on higher dimensions, and we can see them, but they believe that they'll be lifted up in rapture. And I'm not being funny, because I don't think it was funny. I think on higher dimensions, and we can see them, but they believe that they'll be lifted up in rapture. And I'm not being funny, because I don't think it was funny. I think it was some of the people doing videos was funny, and it's cute, but it's actually not funny, that kind of psychosis. That's not faith. That's mass brainwashing. That's not the same. So death is not a calamity. It's a release. It's a benediction. It's like a mercy. My God, you're so stuck in your shit. Let's take you home. And there are people that will pattern again and again in addiction, self-harming. He's not getting it, man. Let's just bring him home. He needs to heal. He's not getting it. He's not getting the tower moments. But a lot of powerful events do happen in your life after contact with the ancient crystal skulls. I've said to people that I wouldn't want to own these things. I'd love to have access to the amethyst skull to work with, but I wouldn't want to own it. The difference between me and him is I would want to own it. And it wouldn't be an ownership. It would be a caretakership. I wouldn't want to own it. The difference between me and him is I would want to own it. And it wouldn't be an ownership. It would be a caretakership. Kind of like how we're supposed to be caretakers of the land. We're not supposed to own it. We're supposed to care for it. We're the guardians of the land, of this planet. We're the guardians of the quartz crystal skulls. We don't own it. We don't sell it. We guard it, land of this planet. We're the guardians of the quartz crystal skulls. We don't own it. We don't sell it. We guard it until the next person guards it. It's passing the torch. Whether, be it land, be it knowledge, be it crystal skulls or other crystals that we guard. We're the caretakers. So you see what I'm saying? It's like You gotta understand, language here is 1980 language. That's what I'm saying. When people say, "Oh, 80s was so great," no, not really, because people were still trying to break through. They were hacking out, unbeknownst to them, they were hacking out of their 3D brain, and the crystal skulls that they were being in contact with was helping them. They were probably touching. Obviously, they were touching these crystal skulls, right? And they were getting downloads of higher. What is it? Whatchamacallit? I just lost my brain here for a minute. Obviously. Ascension light codes, kind of uploading your software on your phone while you're sleeping. So that was happening unbeknownst to them. So did you notice whether your inner awareness, the psychic gifts were heightened? Asked Joshua, and Steve says, "Oh yes, that's for sure. Even someone claiming not to be psychic, not to be involved with any mystical, metaphysical thing, suddenly starts having psychic events in their life. The amethyst skull, even more than the Mayan skull, involved with any mystical, metaphysical thing, suddenly starts having psychic events in their life. The amethyst skull, even more than the Mayan skull, opens all your chakras and allows a lot of things to come out. I have precognitive gifts, abilities with the amethyst skull that were heightened greatly and intensified. People who are psychic were able to have tremendous visions, were able to see pictures of civilizations. I have numerous reports and accounts of people who saw specific events in the past. Joshua, would you say, based upon your own experience and those of others who were able to see this, accounts of people who saw specific events in the past? Joshua, would you say, based upon your own experience and those of others who were able to see the skull, that your life was changed in a positive way? Steve, yes. I said originally, when I first, in 1979, got involved in this, I really was not aware of crystal skulls or even just regular crystals. I had intense interest in crystals, but no real knowledge of past cultures' uses of crystals and how they were being used today. Now I have more knowledge. I have no doubts that these skulls opened them all up. I know I was a crystal engineer in the past. People say Atlantis, and there are things I might have scoffed at 7 years ago. 7 years ago, holy God. So that would have been like 1972, 1973. Joshua, the same thing happened to me. I had no interest in crystals whatsoever, and then after I saw the amethyst skull, suddenly crystals started coming into my life. Steve, your interest then was mainly about UFOs. Now you've been able to make the connections. There definitely is a connection with so-called higher intelligence. Everything seems to be related to these entities. Now I have tremendous knowledge of how crystals were used in Atlantis, in Egypt, by the Mayans, the Olmecs, and so forth. Due to this, my interest in prehistory has been intensified. I can talk at length about prehistorical uses of crystals, but the modern uses are just as fascinating. People don't realize the use of crystals today in our computers, our timepieces, or radios. So many people aren't aware of all the many ways that crystals can be used for healing. I've come in contact with so many healers who use crystals. The crystal technology of the past is now coming up to merge with the technology of today. It will be the technology of the future. It's also amazing all the different types of stones, from lapis to jade to smoky to clear or citrine, all different effects that the various ones have. The difference between amethyst and clear quartz supposedly is a trace of magnesium, which gives it the purple color. But there is much more to it than like amethyst, and is much more different than clear crystal in vibrational properties and effects. Be very be very careful with buying crystals on jewelry and so forth, because a lot of them are lab made. They're not actually crystal. They're lab made. Kind of like fake diamonds, like zircons. So you got to ask them, is this lab made or not? And that's why it's best to get crystals at its rawest level, honestly. Like get a raw piece, and whether you want to put on a ring or a necklace or whatever, it would be probably best if it's not been faceted, or unless you know for a fact that they know exactly where it came from. Okay? And also you can feel the energy, because when you put on a crystal on your person, there's two aspects. One, it's belonging to you. That's why you energetically feel it. That's number one. Number two, if not that, it's fake. If you feel absolutely nothing, it's probably fake. Okay? Okay, so again, I'm going to repeat myself. If I were to compare the two skulls that I work with, the Mayan crystal skull was of a much higher energy. If you give it energy, you would become immediately wired. It could raise your vibration. I think that that was its use as far as healing goes. But it's also scarier. It scared more people. It was much more active. Although you could get that negative feeling from the amethyst crystal skull at first, perhaps, and then it had a calming effect. It's kind of like taking ayahuasca. It's kind of like taking the Great Mother. And at first, it's scary, right? It shows you skulls and bones, and it shows you um, like these ogreic, like weird images that come at you, and then you tuck in and it explodes into color and sacred geometry. It's kind of like interesting how these skulls are working similarly to medicine. Interesting, I think. It was much quieter, the amethyst crystal skull, and the vibration was much more balanced. It would balance one's vibration. Of course, the people who would work with it did not connect with it. The more I would work with the amethyst skull, the more I became attached to it. Françoise Baudoin, Steve friend and owner of the Ram Metaphysical Bookstore, who also had the crystal skull in her home for one night, felt the same way. And in fact, we felt we were connected to it in past lives. That's Joshua. Well, I'm sure you were. I mean, we're learning is that you do not try to find the skulls, they find you. Exactly. There's no doubt about it. And that's how I felt when I had a chance to see the amethyst skull. Steve, as far as we know factually, there were only 4 known full-size crystal skulls. But like I said, we have more than one occasion for people that weren't present at each and other sessions to corroborate each other. Many people said there were 12 skulls, that they were all different other types. I talked to Nick about that, and he felt it was true. Other people also told me that there was a clear amethyst skull. Marcel Vogel felt that there were twin amethysts to the one in San Jose, California, and that there's yet another amethyst skull. Some people have said that they're psychically in San Jose, California, and that there's yet another amethyst skull. Some people have said that they're psychically seeing a rose quartz crystal, a smoky quartz, an opal one, and a jade skull, which is incredible. Joshua, jade, that they're psychically seeing a rose quartz crystal, a smoky quartz, an opal one, and a jade skull, which is incredible. Joshua, jade or emerald? Yes, it could be, but I've heard them say jade to make up 12 different colored skulls. It's really interesting. One of our channelers, Michael Kant, talks about 13 main quartz crystals in Tibet, which are not necessarily on the physical level. They are more etheric than physical, and they are helping to broadcast the higher teachings and knowledge. It is said that these 13 main skulls taken to Orion after Atlantis was destroyed, then they were brought back to the earth, perhaps to Egypt. Steve, you just triggered something interesting. When we asked the priest where the skulls came from, where the brotherhood, is that involved with them? He said Orion. Did he? As a matter of fact, Michael mentioned Orion as the place where the unicorns and the blue madras of the inner earth come from. Are you familiar with that? Steve, I'm familiar with the story of the blue race. What have you heard about them? Well, supposedly there were a more highly developed race which evolved in Lemuria, then disappeared, but they were all traces. They're still blue race. Shiva, Krishna, blue race. One of them, by the way, Ruth Montgomery talks about the various colored races that we used to have before we know each other as we are. Colored races, blue, red. I remember those 2 races that she had mentioned. Ruth Montgomery was a famous channeler in the blue, red. I remember those 2 races that she had mentioned. Ruth Montgomery was a famous channeler in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. Josh Murray was a famous channeler in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s. Joshua, one of the main reasons we are writing this book is to look at the possibility of a connection between UFOs and crystal skulls. In these slides, which Nick shows in his lecture, or those who we have shared in our own lectures, people see UFOs in the main skulls and in the Mitchell Hedges skull, such as the pictures we showed you prior to this interview. Spacecrafts have also clearly been seen in slides of the Paris skull and the British skull. With the amethyst skull, we don't have any pictures with UFOs because the skull is so dark. Well, I've received pictures from people who have made drawings of beings which are connected to the skulls. Joshua, with the amethyst skull, you mean? Yes, with the Mayan skull. And is that the one thing you do see in the Mitchell Hedges skull? You see extraterrestrial beings. They look like what contactees have drawn? Well, the reason that I have said this, are you familiar with the book, The Andreasen Affair? Andreasen Affair. Let me spell it for you. Andrea, it's like Andrea, the name Andrea, and then SSON, affair. Yes. Okay. The beings that are shown in that book are the same as the beings depicted in one of the drawings about the skulls. I'll show you the drawing and you'll see that immediately. Steve opens a folder of drawings by people who work with these skulls. And yeah, you do see extraterrestrial. They look plasmic, okay, in form. And they're dais, if you will. And behind it are temples, pyramids that look Mayan and Egyptian, by the way. And on the top are crystal tops, okay, just to describe the illustration. Joshua, my feeling from the appearance of the beings shown in the drawing is that they are like androids sent by space beings or higher intelligence because the Earth is too dangerous for them to do their work directly. Thus, they send the so-called servants instead. Steve, also, supposedly their vibrations are too high because we are a lower vibration in the dense body, so they can't necessarily communicate. Steve, also, supposedly their vibrations are too high because we are a lower vibration in the dense body, so they can't necessarily communicate on our level. So that's why these interdimensional beings have been contacting us. This is exactly what Joe Dispenza talked about when he was being interviewed by Lilu Ma. I've talked about it so many times, it's insane. For the last 6 years, I've talked about this interview by Lilu Mas, M-A-C-E. Lilu, she's French. And the way you look for this video is Dr. Joe Dispenza working with Lilu Mas. Okay? And it's hard to find. It's about over an hour interview. And he talks about these giant light beings who are healers that come into his healing room. It's not a joke. At the end of the video, you'll see two women in testimonial talking about their experience with these titanic light beings, plasmic light beings, or energetic light beings. At the end of the video, you'll see two women in testimonial talking about their experience with these titanic light beings, plasmic light beings, or energetic light beings. And so one day they're in the room and he's telepathically communicating with them, and they're saying, can you raise the energy of the room because the energy is very dense and it's too low. And if we lower our energies any further, we will lose our consciousness, meaning they'll forget who the fuck they are. You get me? Like we have with amnesia when we come into 3D, through the 3D brains, through the avatars, okay? We will lose our consciousness. So can you raise the vibration of the room because we love ourselves too much to lower ourselves anymore to lose our consciousness? So he had to raise the vibration of the room so that they work with the people that were in that room for physical healing energies. Okay, watch the interview. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. By the way, he was going to do healing energies. Okay, watch the interview. It's not a joke. It's not a joke. By the way, he was going to do. Dr. Joe Dispenza was going to do a seminar in France, and he was barred from doing it. He was not allowed. Why? Very strange, in my opinion. Very strange. So also, supposedly their vibrations are too high because we are of a lower vibration in these dense bodies, so they can't necessarily communicate on our level. So that's why these interdimensional beings have been contacting us. Joshua, yes, it looks similar. Oh, I see now. In this picture, he's seeing three beings with energy beams coming out from their third eyes, which are hitting a block of quartz and transforming it into a crystal quartz. Steve, right. That's an actual representation of a way in which the manufacture of the skull could have been done. Through the process of the mind. You see the word mind? No, through the process of consciousness, not the mind. It's consciousness. The word mind is connected to the 3D brain. So clearly it's not the mind. It's a higher consciousness. It's the consciousness that created us as souls. So clearly it's not the mind. It's a higher consciousness. It's the consciousness that created us as souls. And there are levels to that consciousness, clearly, right? They are using the third eye through the process of the mind. Here's another picture showing a physical means of manufacturing too, besides a psychic manufacturing. This process seems to be the overall consensus of those who believe these skulls were physically formed, that they were made with water pressure. Now, the shaping was done by hand with only the use of a grit or polish such as sand. No high tech was involved. The skulls were formed by the use of great concentration of the mind, a kick wheel, and a lot of water pressure. Primarily, the time frame had to be at least Lemuria. Some people felt that it was some of the more recent skulls, that maybe it was during the time of Atlantis, but most people placed these forms as far back as Lemuria. He said forms. Did you notice that? He didn't say crystal, years old, right? But the forms could be 20, 30, 50, 100,000 years old. Does that mean the form, meaning what we call now the crystal skulls? Just to be clear. The skulls were made in a high ultraviolet type, called now the crystal skulls. Just to be clear. The skulls were made in a high ultraviolet type atmosphere, not the type which we have on the planet today. The sun's rays were shooting a pure ultraviolet light down. This was involved with the shaping too. Now, with this drawing, the man saw that a lot of these three-dimensional beings were involved. So in other words, it could have been a physical maker in a dense body on this planet who was being guided by higher beings during the time that the manufacturing was done. This is one of the theories which Sandra talks about, that if the extraterrestrials did not specifically bring the skulls here, then the inwardly guided, receptive individuals about how to make them. Yes, and that feeling is shared by others. In fact, there is one man who really connected to this theory because he's individuals about how to make them. Yes, and that feeling is shared by others. In fact, there is one man who really connected to this theory because he's a sculptor. His name is Dale Jordan, and he did his crystal work with Marcel Vogel. He is now the curator at the Rosicrucian Egyptian Museum in San Jose, California. Dale is a very high being. He is psychometricized, both of these skulls from me, and he really wanted to connect with the means of manufacture, being a sculptor himself. In fact, if you go to the Rosicrucian Park now, you'll see that the new statue he made of Tutmosis III, Dale did an excellent job on that. He said that he connected with one really high being and was being guided through this process of water pressure, spinning the crystal, and operating a pulley system with a kick wheel, while using a lot of mental concentration and being aided by higher forces. He really felt that he connected with the skull's maker, and that's how he felt it was done, spinning a lot of spinning and shaped by hand. Vogel said it was done by polishing with a grit. He got more into physical manufacturing. That's amazing. Was there anyone working with the skulls who channeled that lasers might have been used during the polishing process? Yes, lasers were used all the time, but not the way we use them today. A laser involved a higher excitation of crystals or gases by an energy source. So yes, there probably were other crystals that were involved in the shaping of the crystal skulls. There could have been some type of laser effect. I'm convinced that in Atlantis they used some type of lasers, so that's no problem for me. The Mitchell hedge. Okay, I'm going to stop for a minute because I just got the download that, and again, for those of you who are like new to energy work and this and that, crystal sounds, I honestly see sounds being used to actually do the first explosion of like a massive big crystal and the skeletal structure being blown from sound. Certain sound frequencies creating the first step of a crystal skull. Similarly to putting sand on a metal plate and putting sound beneath the plate, and it turns itself into sacred geometry patterns. Sound. Do you have permission to use these drawings? Yes, but Michael Campbell would be difficult for me to let go. You should have facsimile. Joel has passed on to a higher plane. He had a very interesting psychometry session with the Mayan skull, but I can't relate his material at this time. What's noteworthy is that his drawings are quite similar to the one that Betty Andreessen drew of her UFO experience. Actually, Michael was the person who gave me the book, The Andreessen Affair. Joshua, Michael must have had either conscious or subconscious contact with space beings. I'm sure he did. It's funny how we call space beings. We've graduated, right? I hope we've graduated. They're not space beings. They're starseeds. They're our ancestors from our beginnings. They come as our allies to remember. And part of it as a mercy, because the way we fell when I do Akashic readings the way we fell, some of us fell thinking, oh, it'd be temporary, I'll just experience this. Some of us fell because we fucked up. We were in frequency matched to a lower dimension because we lost our right to be in the higher dimensions. And some of us just wanted the whole experience. 3,000 years, 20,000 years of being in the human experience and going from 5D and then to 3D, like literally dealing with Alzheimer's, being in the human experience and going from 5D and then to 3D, like literally dealing with Alzheimer's, spiritual Alzheimer's. I'm sure he did. Michael saw them. He was actually with them. In fact, he got into a lot of trouble in his psychometry. Michael saw a scene of Lemuria where there was a battle of beings, a certain type of war involving crystals. He saw these beings as the original man, Adamic, before humans occupied the dense bodies that they are now in. They were very gentle, peaceful, loving, and unaware of things. Michael saw another negative force that came in and tried to destroy them. These people didn't understand death as we do, so they were destroyed by the force. Michael started to have some emotional problems and reacting to his psychometry. He connected with it very personally. He said that that the beings, depicted in his drawings with the crystal skulls were the benevolent, not negative ones. Did he connect it with pyramids too? Yes. Michael saw pyramids in Lemuria in psychometry. He saw all the scenes taking place in Lemuria. We had psychometry dates that the Mayan's crystal skull was at least 20,000 years old. The amethyst skull was even older. Maybe it was carved, but why was it shaped into a skull? Many people have different ideas about this. I personally believe that they were shaped into skulls on this planet. I have no problem with what the priest told me, that the amethyst crystal skull was not grown on this planet, and that the amethyst skull perhaps was shaped in Lemuria. My personal feelings is that the amethyst crystal skull is much older than the Mayan crystal skull, and that it was used as a model that perhaps the others were copied from at a later time. Yes, the amethyst crystal skull is much older than the Mayan crystal skull, and that it was used as a model that perhaps the others were copied from at a later time. Yes, that's a good question. But I'm sure that a lot of people are going to ask, when one looks at the known skulls, why do they have different shapes? You see, one theory is that perhaps they were different races of man, and the crystal skulls are representing the various skulls of these races. When you look at Nefertiti and Akhenaten, they have these long heads. Now, in some African villages, they will actually tape the baby's head so that it's long, just so you know on the side note. So there's that aspect. But all of the children of Akhenaten and Nefertiti have long skulls. And I'm sure crystal where that was so. It was carved in that way. So the theory that perhaps those were many different races of man, and the crystal skulls are representing the various skulls of these races of man. Yeah. Françoise had this belief that it was extraterrestrial. She saw the back of the skull was very developed as the cerebellum. Sorry. My undergraduate degree in physiology and anatomy, so I have a very strong anatomical background, and I agree it's actually fully developed. There's no cerebral cortex. It's really not ET because that wasn't the way the skull was shaped. But Françoise was thinking it was modeled with an extraterrestrial being. And the note of this person said, or future man. My feeling is that that's not true. The skulls are of this person said, or future man. My feeling is that that's not true. The skulls are all symbolic. They weren't anatomically correct, except for the Mitchell-Hedges skull, which is very much like the human skull with a detachable jaw and a full cerebral cortex. These other skulls were shaped only for symbolic reasons. They weren't actually modeled after any living being because there's no forehead. There would be no intelligence as we know it because there's no cerebral cortex. That's a good point to consider. I never felt that they were modeled after humans except for the Mitchell-Hedges skull. The specific reason why the Mitchell-Hedges skull may be so different than the others is because it was modeled from a human skull, unless it actually was a human skull, which I said in my first talk about these skulls, that it was changed into crystal, which is quite possible. This is what Michael Kant claims. This makes so much sense. Do you feel that the amethyst skull is the only one which is masculine? No. It didn't feel masculine to me. Sandra, in terms of shape? No, not any kind of terms. I said it was symbolic. The skull had a more neuter feel to it. It had both masculine and feminine energy. While the Mayan skull, people called it a she. They had definite feminine impressions of it. I don't think it was shaped based on any living model, at least any human model that was ever on this planet. I've only seen one skull, the Mitchell Hedges skull. Right. I've just heard that all of them, in terms of shape, when they were being analyzed, are feminine skulls, except for the amethyst skull being masculine. Again, to be anatomically correct, not at all. These skulls seem to be coming from higher intelligence. Whether they are extraterrestrial or interdimensional, a skull is found, and an anthropologist or a physical anthropologist would say that it's male or female skull. But believe me, that's not steadfast, because it can be that there are many, or a physical anthropologist would say that it's male or female skull. But believe me, that's not steadfast, because it can be that there are many female skulls with very thick bones, which could be mistaken for male skulls when taken out of the ground. And the same mistake could be made about a lot of male skulls, which have very thin bones. The skull is not a good determination for gender. When scientists find a skeleton, they usually go more by the pelvic and by the ribs, except to find out if it's male or female. The skull really is not highly accurate alone. Solely having a skull to say that the being was male or female is insufficient. No, I never felt any of that. This skull was either feminine or masculine. Well, I'm going to stop here for a minute, because I can tell you that some skulls do come out as either neutral or masculine or feminine. And again, I'm talking about skulls, crystals that have absolutely no shape, right? We're talking about like raw crystals. Like I have this crystal that's literally looks like a tear shaped, and it has many ridges, okay? Many sacred geometry like ridges that are like squares, right? And it's a neutral energy, to be honest with you. But I have some, like my carnelian on my masculine energy. So some crystals will have a neutral energy, or and some you'll feel you'll say that's my guy or that's my girl. That's it's weird. They have these personalities, and they have their own personalities, and they're certain about who they are. It's the wildest thing. When you connect with your crystals, they tell you who they are. You don't tell them; they tell you. And they help you name them, okay? Like my son's quartz crystal I just mentioned previously, the name of that crystal was Haku. And Haku was his crystal and his ally, okay? The name of that crystal was Haku. And Haku was his crystal and his ally, okay? Okay, so let me continue. Okay, listen to this. Did you have UFO experience before you saw the skulls? Yes, I've had them. I've had UFO experience that go back to my youth, which I kept to myself and never ever talked about it. When I was 8 years old up in New York City, I saw unexplained lights. I had a first encounter, never spoke about it to anyone. In 1975 City, I saw unexplained lights. I had a first encounter, never spoke about it to anyone. In 1975 in Santa Cruz, I had an experience. And so as these things have come up more and more, now I've talked about them. And by the way, I'm going to actually say in 1979, I forgot if it was 1979 or 1980, I talked about how right in New York City, me and my brother are looking out the window where we're seeing UFO activities. No, not satellite, because they were zigzagging, going up and down. There were like, I don't know, like fucking 15 ships and a mothership, and we kept watching it. And it was going up and down. It went on we went to bed. It was too late. It went on. It was insane. It was right out our window. I'll never forget that. So this is just to corroborate that this shit was happening in New York City, and it was happening in Paris. I've seen some shit in Paris as well in the night sky. What kind of experience did you have in 1975? Expanded and contracted, moved and hovered as I was looking out the window. I lived in Santa Cruz on Soquel Avenue. I first thought that there was no explosion somewhere and that there was a fire downtown. I didn't hear any fire engines and didn't see anybody responding to it. It seemed to just be a couple 100 feet off the ground, and it expanded, glowed, moved, and then just totally disappeared. It wasn't until I read J. Allen Hynek's book, 100 feet off the ground, and it expanded, glowed, moved, and then just totally disappeared. It wasn't until I read J. Allen Hynek's book, a couple of years later that I realized that this was a recurring event that a lot of people had seen. How about the childhood memories you experienced? When I was 8 years old, I was on the top of my apartment house in the Bronx, New York. I saw a formation of lights flying, which I first thought were just airplanes. Then they made a tremendous turn. Yeah, that's what I saw too with my brother. A 90-degree turn and came back to hover. I had the awareness that at the time they were not airplanes. Yeah, they were not satellites, not airplanes. They were something else. But I never spoke about it to anybody until just the last couple of years. I haven't had any increase in such sightings since I became involved with the skulls. Just more of an increase in knowledge of things, an awareness of higher intelligence, and all the information about UFOs have come my way. When I worked at the Rosicrucian Order, they didn't want to get involved with the subject of UFOs at all. That was a taboo subject to them. And this is common. Many groups don't want to discuss UFOs. Do you feel that now you have some kind of direct communication with beings? Well, the priest told us that if you get involved, you get initiated into the brotherhood when you work with the skulls. So yes, I'm in contact with these same things. Once you're in, you're not getting out. You can't go backwards. There definitely was a feeling of initiation and working with these crystal skulls that I became part of the group. Other people have felt the same way. People who have had a psychometry session with skulls hug me, thank me, and kiss me when they left. And people have all felt connected. Everyone that have been involved with the crystal skull feels like a bond rejoining. It doesn't make any difference whether you ever see the skull again. Right. I'm going to stop here for a minute. So, my advice to you, right. I'm going to stop here for a minute. So, my advice to you, okay, is if you want to connect with these skulls, right? Right? Skulls that we'll never see, skulls that you probably will never touch, is to take your time, put it out there that you want a crystal skull. It took me 20 years to find mine, just so you know. So be patient. And then communicate remotely from your skull and ask to see, because you don't know, right? It could be a Mitchell hedges, it could be the Mayan skull, the amethyst, it could be other skulls, the one in Paris, the one in the museum in Britain. It could be one that hasn't even been found yet. It could be an interdimensional skull, but using your skull as a conduit to link up to whatever you're supposed to connect to. We only have 4 people on this live. This is your message. Okay? For the other 4 that'll listen to it after, once you read, you listen to the pre-recording, that's your message. Because I'd have 100,000, I should have like 100 people here, but no one gives a fuck. They want to talk about, who fucked who and who did this, and they want to talk about other shit. They want to argue and not find truth. And I'm irritated because the truth to our ascension does not lie in debating the obvious that people should not be bombed and people should not die of famine. That is obvious. So what is the portal out of this fucking shit show controlled by assholes? Higher powers. And how do we align with those higher powers? Through metaphysical study, through transmuting dense energy to higher energy. Isn't that obvious? I would think that would be obvious. At some point, you don't push a mountain. You levitate above it. Okay? You understand the holographic universe. You understand, or you try to understand and study the nature of reality in our little pea-sized brain of these 3D fucking brains. We're hacking out of our brains to connect with our innate soul's ancient wisdoms and infinite knowledge. And quartz crystals are the allies that can help us do that. So if you're listening to me, it's because it's your message. Does that make sense? You got to understand what we're dealing with here. Thank you, my love. You've got to understand what we're dealing with here. Okay? Because we are dealing with people who love the fucking drama. But they don't want the solution. I guess the solution is self-realization. And from the time of Yeshua, self-realization, people don't want to be self-realized. What, do you remember the apostles? Why do you speak to her and not to us? Why do you tell her this and not to us? Yeah, why? Because you fucking are dumb. I'm sorry, I'm calling the apostles. They're dumb. Dumb. And so Yeshua was imparting these kinds of, trust me, this kind of information on power, on transmuting dense energy to her because she was an open vessel. There's a, when the energy to her because she was an open vessel. There's a, when they talk about casting the 7 demons, it's like talking to fucking 3-year-olds that are afraid of nightmares and afraid of the dust bunnies under their beds, man. The 7 demons cast out are the 7 chakras. He aligned her chakras. He basically cleaned her chakras of densities. There's no demons. It's activating her chakras. You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I sound probably arrogant to you, maybe, but I'm not. I'm not trying to be arrogant. I'm trying to fucking tell you that we all have that information. All of us are equal in our ability to harness this knowing. So am I really arrogant? Or am I fucking just looking at people going, rapture, rapture, oh my God. Or who did what? Oh my God, the e-files, the e-files. How do we stop any more e-files from ever corrupting our planet? By changing the nature of the consciousness and doing it from a place of love. To understand why these mega insane maniacs want to harness children. To understand why, not sob about it. Oh my God, I'm so depressed. I'm so exhausted. No, fuck, no. You go into fucking, okay, be the solution or you're the problem. And as high priests and priestesses, we're being asked to fucking transmute energy for love, from love. Not from anger, vengeance. Though, yeah, I sound pissed. But don't confuse being pissed and righteous anger and passion. The answers are here. I'm reading you these things because I want to share with you the various ways that transmuting the holographic universe can then become our new reality of 5D New Earth. It's not a dream. It's not a dead-end street. This reality is a dead-end street. Wash and repeat. New incarnation. Oh, now you're in World War I and you're a fighter bomber. World War I, fun. You died 18. Oh, now it's, now you're going through the depression. You're a baby and your mom can't feed you, so she abandons you in an orphanage. Next incarnation. Now you're born in 1960. You get what I'm saying? Wash and repeat. I'm not reading this to entertain you or to get likes or whatever. I'm reading this so that you can get fierce and urgent and stop saying you're tired. It's not going to work. Go out in the rain, barefoot, and ask Pachamama to heal you and to give you the energy you need to go back in and do your meditation. Go out in the rain, barefoot, and ask Pachamama to heal you and to give you the energy you need to go back in and do your meditation, doing your studying while you're, living in the 3D world and kind of like being a trapezist between 3D and the real reality, which is coming in 5D. And it's not rapture. It isn't. It was a lie. And I did a whole thing on the rapture and the Schofield Bible a month ago. So, it's not about buying fucking 100 crystals. It's just about having maybe 5 or 10 allies. I would say at the most 10, honestly. Okay? It's not hoarding. It's being activated by and activating the crystals. So I'm going to continue reading if you'd like me to. Okay? It was all about ego. Okay, good for you, Angie. That's wonderful. That's actually great. Okay, let's continue. So how many do we have? Oh, six. Okay. And I say that for a reason. Trust me, because I'm like, okay. So we talked about UFOs, which we know are, we know that. You see pictures in Mexico, Peru. Shirley MacLaine talked about it in Out on a Limb. We read that book in our book club, and she's seen UFOs in Peru, and that's big in Peru, which makes sense. So let's continue. Listen to this. All my crystals here have been charged with the energy of the crystal skulls. I feel total connected with the skulls. We're finding that there's a greater interest in crystal skulls now. Do you agree? There's a definite increase in interest. You're right. I could sit and talk about these things for days. I mean, there's just an incredible amount of information that was released. There seems to be an ability of these skulls to tap into various areas that correspond to different functions of the brain, and you get information dealing with that. In other words, if you put your fingers to the skull's eyes and meditate, you see a lot of visual things. If you go back to the area corresponding to the auditory centers of the brain, you hear things, etc. As you meditate on the various areas of the skull, you can get information which correspond to the functions of the brain associated with that area. So they're definitely programmed that way. It's incredible. Were you familiar with anyone who used hand signals for activations of the brain associated with that area? So they're definitely programmed that way. It's incredible. Were you familiar with anyone who used hand signals for activation when working with the skulls? No. We mainly activated them through breath, through sound. The priest did an experiment with it where he didn't do anything with hand signals, but he did activate the skull through psychic ability. In my regressions, when I've been with the Mitchell Hedges skull, I automatically go into a whole series of hand signals which actually activate the skull. My feeling is that the beings which work with me use them as their language, so I'm communicating with these beings as well as with the skull. I definitely agree with what Vogel said about the skull being a language decoder, because this Mayan priest didn't speak English and I don't speak Spanish. Sandra, right? I had a session with the Mayan priest and his interpreter. When I asked a question, it had to be translated in Spanish to get an answer. One time when I questioned the priest, he turned to answer me in Spanish and I knew what he said. Then in the translation came through and I said, that's not what he said. He said such and such. And the translator said, I thought you don't speak Spanish. He put the message right into my brain. Telepathy. Yeah. Those kinds of certain crystals that are meant to be yours will help you telepathically. There's no doubt. Yes, Sandra says, the priest did the same thing with me. Nick had him over to his home for dinner. We were talking about all my experiences related to the skulls and my energy problems because of them. And when I went home at night, he came to me astrally and talked to me in Spanish. He did a healing on me and I talked to him in Spanish. I don't speak any Spanish. Right, it's amazing. And it was really wonderful to communicate. Let me explain why this doesn't shock me. Because we've known, I kind of laugh because do you understand how far we've come? Again, remember, you know this, right? You know we've had multiple incarnations, right? And we can't learn any language. We will speak in foreign languages and understand in dreams through meditations. Why? Because it's captured in our soul's crystalline light. Our soul knows Latin or Aramaic. Why do you think I'm fascinated by Sanskrit and Aramaic? I remember my mom when she was 15, dreaming in Latin. She was studying Latin, okay, but she was dreaming in Latin. That's when she knew she had broken through. And she reportedly said that she was in ancient Rome, speaking in Latin. She was having a past life. So what's interesting about these languages, right, is that they'll activate you. Land will activate you. You go to Portugal, holy shit, I've been here. Morocco, oh my God, I remember. And suddenly, you don't know why, but it's not that you either are able to decode it and your little fucking 3D brain wants to filter. No, that's not possible. It's not possible for you to know this, but yet you understand. Maybe you understand the frequency of the language, and if you allow yourself to just let go and stop fucking making, well, it doesn't make sense. It's not supposed to make sense. Just go with it. My God, they're speaking Spanish. I understand. What the fuck's going on? Don't ask that. Go, wow, I'm speaking Spanish. Wow. No, I can't speak it, but I can understand every word. Why? Well, because you're activating a past life knowledge. You understand? That's what's happening. What, you don't think you've been Spanish? You don't think you've been Mexican? You don't think you've been Mayan? Of course you have. What, do you think you've only had 5 lives? I love it when people come to me for an Akashic reading. Of course you have. What, do you think you've only had 5 lives? I love it when people come to me for an Akashic reading and say, oh, the psychic said I've had 5 lives on Earth. 5 lives on Earth? I don't think so. I don't think so. Or 5 lives, period? Like, no. What kind of psychic is that would say that to someone? I mean, seriously. I mean, really? 5 lives, that's it. No. If some, I mean, seriously. I mean, really? 5 lives, that's it. No. If somebody said 100 lives, I'd still say, it's like saying you're a newborn. So, yes, the priest has astrally visited me many times, and he has visited Françoise too. We both felt very connected to him. I still don't understand what his connection was with this other person, the agent, because then the greed got involved. The greed got involved. They were insisting on selling these artifacts. Why? I begged. We had to set up our own crystal skull research group. I formulated a whole structure, and they were going to let me borrow the crystal. We were going to work with it and give lectures with it. I would have given them, I would have given them a rental fee for it and so on. But the greed involved was so much at first. They wanted $100,000. Remember, this is 1982. And then they wanted $200,000. Then they wanted $1 million. Artifacts, $1 million. He would have had sold the Mayan crystal to the Rosicrucian order for $200,000 if they had raised the funds. But the imperator of the Rosicrucian order wanted to have nothing to do with the skull because he just didn't want to see it as a verifiable. Imperator of the Rosicrucian order wanted to have nothing to do with the skull because he just didn't want to see it as a verifiable artifact. It couldn't be documented. What the fuck? Documented. So not only are you dealing with greed, you want to see it as a verifiable artifact. It couldn't be documented. What the fuck? Documented. So not only are you dealing with greed, you're dealing with stupidity. Can you imagine? And honestly, can I be blunt with these guys? I would have given them 50 grand in a fucking suitcase in cash and they would have taken it. The nature of greed is a visual. You got to give them a visual aid. They'll walk with that. Especially in 1980s. 50 grand, that's about what? Probably 200 grand today, actually. $200,000 then? That's a couple million, I'm sure, today. The priests and the agents were offering to exhibit the Mayan crystal skull in the Rosicrucian Egyptian Museum for free, and the imperator turned it down. Rosicrucian order are connected to the museum for free, and the imperator turned it down. Rosicrucian order are connected to the Masons. I'll say no. And 33, you'll connect that, hopefully. I'm not going to say more, because this little channel likes to fucking anything that deals. And 33, you'll connect that, hopefully. I'm not going to say more, because this little channel likes to fucking anything that deals with something that, is about illuminations. I'll just say that. They fucking shut it down. Boom. My mother used to get her teachings from the Rosicrucian order in the 70s in Los Angeles. So I remember those pamphlets. I remember it coming. She was an honorary member of the Rosicrucian order. I kid you not. I'll never forget that shit. And it was pedestrian in those days. You know what I mean? You had to be metaphysical. Do you understand what I'm saying? It was like the 70s and the 80s were, it wasn't really big. So he turned it down. There was so much greed involved, and it was so inconsistent. The price constantly rising for no reason. This is why I had to back out. I just wanted them to loan me the skull, and we would have done an incredible thing. Well, let me just say, you don't fucking take... The other thing he had said is I didn't want to own the skull. Do you remember I said that? So he didn't want to own it. He wanted to get it on loaner. Then you have people who are greedy, and then you have people who are afraid. And so God knows where these skulls are today. God knows. I'll do some research, and I will do some research. And then I think our next session will be about what I find. If I find anything at all, I'm not joking. And I'll find out if the one in the British Museum is still there, and I'll find out if the one in the Paris Museum is still there, and what other crystal skulls have emerged since 1982, if any. And to be honest, I haven't found any good books since this timeline. Okay, I bought another book that was earlier. In fact, it's in my shelf. It's shit. So it's weird. It's like it went the path to these skulls went dead. Boom, lights out. At least that's what I'm feeling. You know what I mean? The Pope. Gotcha, because I didn't know what you meant for a minute. Maybe the Pope has one. I wouldn't be surprised if he has one. There is one. There's I need to stop for a minute. The Knights Templars brought back a skull. Do you know what the skull was? Reportedly, it was. Hang on. There was a skull they brought back, but there was another skull that you can actually go see, and it's an actual skull, supposedly actual. I'm not sure. Okay, but I've seen pictures of it, surrounded by gold, and it's the skull of Mary Magdalene. It's in France, and I believe it's of petrified gold, and it's the skull of Mary Magdalene. It's in France, and I believe it's of petrified bone. It looks like it anyway. And the fascination with skulls, if you go down to, I remember going to, I lived in Rome when I was a kid, right? And I remember we went to the catacombs. I'll never forget that in my whole entire life. And in the catacombs, it were stacks with skulls. Children's skulls, adults, and I remember running I was 8 years old, running my fingers through the skulls. There was both horror and awe. Horror because how the fuck did they get here, right? What happened that they could stack and that many skulls going down a pathway, right, on either side of you, from what I recall. But how? Like, what caused this? My little 8-year-old brain was like, going through a lot. So, and I wasn't traumatized. I hate when parents are so afraid of exposing their kids to shit. I wasn't traumatized. I never forgot it. And it's interesting because here I am talking about crystal skulls, and I've been chasing crystal skulls since I was 31. So there's something to that. There's knowledge here, and fear of the unknown constantly blocks people from moving forward. There's knowledge here, and fear of the unknown constantly blocks people from moving forward. It's so crazy to me. Fear of what, my friend? We've incarnated many times. We will never die. Don't you get it? We'll never die. We're going to come back again. But the question is, where do you want to come back? Do you want to be sucked back into the vortex of 3D, into amnesia? Or do you want to be in power to where you go, where you're matching your energy? Not a question anymore. It's not about, oh my God, I'm afraid of something. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing, it can harm your soul. Nothing. And a lot of these metaphysical content creators are trying to scare the shit out of people. Oh my God, even when I'm dead, I could be trapped. They can own my soul. No, they can't unless you say yes to it. They can't. They can't own anything about you. Nothing is yours to be grabbed or enslaved unless you agree to it through apathy, through fear, through deer in the headlights. So practice. Practice being fearless in the face of what scares the shit out of you. Push through. If anything, from Pachamama, the plant medicine, it taught me to push in, to tuck in. That's what she taught me, really, ultimately. She taught me 2 things: unconditional divine love, 1, and 2, to push through fear. Fuck this. Let's tuck in. Fuck it. I'm going for broke. I have nothing to lose. I don't want to own this crystal skull. Why not? And fuck, who's telling you to own it? You're a caretaker. So it's interesting, the mentality. I know different things about the Toltecs. There's a whole Toltec philosophy of Don Juan in Carlos Castaneda's books. But what is taught in anthropology about the Toltecs was that they were a late Indian tribe, very warlike and aggressive. They conquered the Aztecs and the Mayans at the end of their civilization. They were the last Mayan group. But they practiced many black arts, a lot of controlling, manipulative things. Now, Don Juan's story of the Toltecs is much different. He claims that they're a much more ancient source of shamanic groups that wasn't dark at all. The priest took a map of all the Mayan sites and he showed me which were dark, those who were bad and should be avoided, and those that were good to be around. He pointed to Chichen Itza, all the sites in the Yucatan, and he said to stay away from them because the Toltecs there had charged Chichen Itza, all the sites in the Yucatan, and he said to stay away from them because the Toltecs there had charged all of those sites negatively. But then he talked about where the Mayan crystal skull came from, Copan. He talked about Copan, Tikal, and Palenque, which are three main sites. They were the great sites of light and crystal research, especially at Tikal. The Mayan priests claimed the Mayan skulls were found in Copan in 1912. In 1912, by the way, that's 4. The Mayan priests claimed the Mayan skulls were found in Copan in 1912. In 1912, by the way, that's 4. And 4 is the volunteer energy. Sandra, the reason I asked about the Toltecs is because when I was channeling with the Mitchell Hedges skull, I received that there were a group that had done things with this skull. This is a map he used to show me. Copan is in Honduras. He said that all the sites up there, Shishan, Itza, Miapan, and Uxmal, were charged negatively because of the Toltecs who had taken over the Mayans. At this point, in fact, blood sacrifice were done, and they used the skulls for a negative power trips. But all of these sites here, especially in Hoka, hang on, how do you pronounce that? Osaka, Huaca, and Tabasco. This is where the Olmec were, and they were all positive ones. Tikal, Copan, and Palenque made a right triangle. Could you elaborate on the history of the Mayan skulls? I was told how the skull was discovered. There was a plague around 1910 that was wiping out Mayan villages, and the priests all gathered together. They did a very powerful ceremony and prayed to the higher brotherhood to help them. Then some Mayan priests were hired to help with the British excavation when they overturned a stone altar to help them. Then some Mayan priests were hired to help with the British excavation when they overturned a stone altar at Copan. There was the skull. They didn't tell the archaeologists. They took it home to the village and cured the plague, and that's how it got passed down. I don't blame them for not saying a fucking thing. Did they say anything about whether the amethyst skull was at the same site? No. The priest was vague about where the amethyst skull had actually come from. Again, the agent stated that it was used as a paperweight for Diaz. When Diaz lost power, it returned to the right hands. The priest just said it was handed down through the generation of the priests, and that's a long time. He didn't know exactly what site could have come from. He said it was from Huaca originally. Did he explain how he was able to take possession of these skulls? Yes, he was vague, though. He wouldn't be specific, but he said it was because of his initiation in both the Mayan and the Aztec brotherhoods. He said that he was part of a certain priesthood, which has the knowledge about the location of a hidden cache that was passed down, and he was part of a certain priesthood, which has the knowledge about the location of a hidden cache that was passed down, and he supposedly feel that saying he wanted to sell the skull was a ruse. In other words, do you think that he had some other reasons for bringing the skulls here? That's an interesting question. We felt really connected to him and that his motives were pure, but I think there was something with the individual, the agent who he was connected with, that the priest was putting him through a series of tests. I think it was correct that the priest was putting him through a series of tests. I think it was correct that they did need money to feed the village and that people were starving, but that was only a partial reason. There was something involved with this agent who had been a priest, he told us, in a past life, had failed and needed to go through a certain test in this life. So I believe that the priest's motives were complex. Some motives were for money. Some were to get these items to us, which he was told to do so by the Brotherhood. In fact, he was told to bring the skull to the Rosicrucian order specifically. And the son of a bitch who was the head of the Rosicrucian refused. I'm adding that, just to remind you. Because there was no documentation. 3D minds, logical minds, scientific minds, when I say scientific, 3D scientific minds, are the curse of evolution. Okay? The curse. Because they want, now if you listen to my last live that I did on the crystal skulls on how they were made using tools, I preface Okay, the whole reading. Okay, you can watch it. You'll see the high priestess. Right? You'll see it. It's a playlist I created for this on my YouTube channel. On my YouTube, follow me on YouTube. Same handle, Sacred Intimacy Tarot. But this concept of no documentation, the concept of who made it, how, same handle, Sacred Intimacy Tarot. But this concept of no documentation, the concept of who made it, how was it made with human tools, prove to us how it came to be. What the fuck? If something's 20,000 years old, how the hell is it going to have a paper trail of documentation? How? The cynicism, even that has imbued the spiritual community, is actually quite dangerous in its stupidity. Because what we've done is, instead of using our intuition, our psychic abilities, like I do when I pick a crystal and I feel nothing, it's the other. It's that simple. Because it needs to fucking emanate a power. And if you truly are a leader of like the Rosicrucian order, whatever the fuck you're doing, right? Whatever, a temple, whatever. And if you truly are a leader of like the Rosicrucian order, whatever the fuck you're doing, right? Whatever, a temple, whatever, and you can't tell whether or not something's fucking valid, especially in a crystal, then maybe you should step down. Because what are you doing? Or are you, or is there an agenda not to grow knowledge? Because anyone that's been around the Mayan or amethyst crystal or Mitchell hedge has been activated by its very presence. Kind of like what happens with a moldavite crystal. Good luck in finding a real one. Good luck. When people tell me, oh, I wear it all day long. Yeah, it's fake. It's fake. You'd be nauseous. Oh, good luck. When people tell me, oh, I wear it all day long. Yeah, it's fake. It's fake. You'd be nauseous. You'd have headaches. It's fake. And this is known if you study it. Okay, so let's continue. I'm sad, actually. Part of me is sad because I'm like, what? But I have to trust that the crystal skulls are being protected by higher beings, which we know, protected and guided to the right people at the right time. I have to trust that, and they have for thousands of years. And he didn't know who he was going to meet there, Joshua says, about taking it specifically to the Rosicrucian order. Steve says he was told that they would know how to use it. Take it to the Rosicrucians. Then he said he was told the amethyst skull should come to Francoise and to me. He said he was told these things, but I feel that the greed factor was partially what was involved. Joshua, do you have any feelings or sense that somehow you will be involved with some kind of a group or organization which will have the amethyst skull, or literally be a guardian of it? There you go. Steve, I dreamed of it. Joshua, how about during the period when you were working with it? Yes, I felt that I was supposed to be doing this work. I was supposed to be a scientist working with these skulls, not knowing them, but having access to them. Joshua, Nick says he knows a few people who are willing to buy these skulls, and he even put out offers. We were interested in any stories about the skulls. It's like suddenly they were receiving absolutely no response to any of their numerous offers, as if someone just turned this whole process off. And these are people that really had the money to buy them. So Nick said that the next time I talked to the owner at the gallery where the amethyst skull was stored, I should ask him how much they were asking for the amethyst skull. There's supposedly a man who already has the money for it, but somehow it's not working out. I guess that's power for the course. I know. I could tell you I had numerous accounts like that working with both skulls trying to get set up deals. He used me as a scientific ally. I mean, I was the archaeologist. I could verify things and so on. I read the Hewlett-Packard reports of their tests with the crystal skulls. What were the results of these tests? They could not determine how the Mitchell hedge skull was made. I believe that they made the same conclusion about the amethyst skull and the Mayan skull. The scientists said that there wasn't any indication of hydraulic or high-pressure tools used. All three skulls were carved, quote-unquote, against their natural axis, which means that if if they were to hit it with a hydraulic tool, it would shatter it into many pieces. Hewlett Packard had no idea how the skulls were made, but they even said that the skulls were much older than they had previously estimated. They believe that the skulls are older than the Aztec or Mayan civilization. All the scientists agreed that the skulls are very old and they couldn't have been created by modern means of manufacturing. Joshua. Now, the archaeologists believe that the Mayan, I guess the Aztecs and the Incas too, didn't use a lot of crystals. Is that true? No. There were more or less agreeing now that they did use crystals, but they put labels on crystals. Is that true? No. There were more or less agreeing now that they did use crystals, but they put labels on things. For instance, archaeologists have called some of these skulls Aztec or Mayan, Joshua, right? So they said that they believe the Indians carved them, but they have no idea how. They don't give the Indians credit enough to have had the technology to do so, but they just label the skulls Aztec or Mayan. They have to accept the fact that the Mayans were incredible carvers of jade, and that the Aztecs employed certain Indian groups known as the Zapotecs and the Mixtecs, who were incredible carvers of jade, and that the Aztecs employed certain Indian groups known as the Zapotecs and the Mixtecs, who were great artisans. They did a lot of jade carving, so they were recognized as great artisans. It is known that they used crystals, but academic anthropologists don't know why. And academic anthropologists don't know why, and archaeologists don't know how much, because most of the scientists don't have any understanding of the metaphysical uses of crystals. Do you see the problem here? Do you get the problem? So you've got Egyptologists, anthropologists, archaeologists going into, for example, Egypt, right? During the Napoleonic conquest. We start then. Let's start then. 1815 thereabouts, right? And then it progresses, right? 19, 20, 30. They have no metaphysical understanding of what they're excavating. They're looking for is fucking gold. Okay? And many of these artifacts made of crystals, because I know the Egyptians had tons of crystals, tons of little miniature Horuses and miniature, cats. I forgot the name for the cat, but whatever. Isis and so forth, right? I know they did, but they were probably given to the fucking, people who were helping them excavate, the peasants, and they were selling it as trinkets to fucking tourists. That's why you hear me getting a little, I mean, because I'm like tying the shit together in horror. Why am I saying that about the crystal? Well, because back 25 years ago, I saw on auction a cat Basset. That's what it was, Basset, the cat Basset, quartz crystal carved. Okay, with a little real, just pure quartz, no painting, nothing like that. It might have been painted, but it carved. Okay, with a little real, just pure quartz, no painting, nothing like that. It might have been painted, but by the time it was, anyway, they were saying it was about 3,000 years old, being sold at auction for $2,000 starting bid. And it was real. That's why I said what I said, because I've seen it. And I'm, okay, if I see one, if there's one, there's 20. No idea. I'm going to repeat it. Most of scientists don't have any understanding of the metaphysical uses of crystal. Fuck crystal, of anything. They have no metaphysical, they don't have a spiritual fucking compass. The new anthropologists need to have a spiritual, psychic understanding. If you listen to my previous live on the crystal skulls with Nick, he finds a crystal skull in the middle of fucking nowhere in Mexico with 3 guys. And he said, no, it's right here. It's right here. And they dig for 7 hours. A pure psychic, telepathic connection to the skull. 7 hours of digging, 6 to 7 hours. And they found it. There it is. This is the problem we're having with historians, anthropologists, Egyptologists. They have no fucking clue. They're dealing in 3D realms. And they're missing, as Nick said, the most important, discoveries, which are being grabbed by the local people and sold as trinkets. for 1,000 here. I don't know how old it is. It's 3,000 years old. It's kind of like the Nag Hammadi, how that was sold. Do you know the story of how that was sold? I'll do a thing on that if you want me to tell you. It's extraordinary. Okay, so let's continue. However, Nick's research team in 1979 to 80 called the skull a Mayan crystal skull because that's what the anthropologists would do. They would say, yes, it was found in Copan, so it must have been made by Mayans, and so we'll call it a Mayan skull or the Aztec skull or this or that. The Mitchell Hedges skull has been classified by some archaeologists as being carved by the Aztecs, being just a couple of hundred years old, even though Hewlett-Packard won't say anything. I don't believe that the Aztecs or Mayan carved any of the ancient humanized-sized crystal skulls. The Hewlett-Packard scientists put the skull in alcohol baths, and they did weight and light polarization tests and so forth. The skulls were all carved from one single piece of crystal, although the and they did weight and light polarization tests and so forth. The skulls were all carved from one single piece of crystal, although the amethyst skull may be different, and it seemed to be a cluster that was molded together. But the way it was molded together cannot be duplicated by modern techniques. So was it molded together by sound frequency, by heat, by conscious forms? Thought become matter? Do you know if Hewlett-Packard did any other tests with color, light, or sounds on the skull? I don't know. If they did, but we did at the Rosicrucian Research Department, we did tests with laser lights and with ultraviolet lights on the Mayan skull. What kind of results did you get when you use different colors? Similarly to the Mitchell Hedges skull, but not as fine. If you hit the Mayan skull with a beam coming from the side, it comes out through the third eye. So it's prismatically set to do this. Lighting sometimes comes out in different areas, like through the eyes. There are built-in prisms that will refract and reflect light in different ways. The amethyst skull, being opaque, of course, shows less effects since light doesn't go through it. It glowed in the dark, though. All the skulls glow in the dark. They'll have their own aura. The Mayan skull has a blue-green aura, and the amethyst skull has a purple to blue-green spectrum on its aura. If you adjust your eyes and meditate with a crystal skull in absolute darkness, after a while you will see them glowing. They do glow. You will see this after you work with them. They are just like generators, and they energize the more you work with them. In work with the Mitchell Hedges skull, they observed colors coming out of it that should not have been there, especially they weren't shining those particular color lights upon the skull. Coming out of it that should not have been there, especially they weren't shining those particular color lights upon the skull, especially gold lights. They said it came out all the time. Did you see that with these skulls? I guess we can only talk about the Mayan skulls because the amethyst skull color lights upon the skull, especially gold lights. They said it came out all the time. Did you see that with these skulls? I guess we can only talk about the Mayan skulls because the amethyst skull is such a dark purple, just its own aura. I mean, the aura colors we saw should have been there based upon the colors you put in the skull. We shouldn't have seen the color blue-green, but that's indeed what came out, blue-green. Heart chakra and throat chakra, right? That's on just a pedestrian hit, right? Did the colors ever come out in a specific area of the Mayan skull? Or was it just, as you're saying, that these prisms reflect the light in a certain direction or a position to the skull? Just in the third eye, with the Mayan crystal skull, wherever you hit, it would emerge as colored through the third eye, sometimes as purple. Third eye, purple. It would emerge as colored through the third eye, sometimes as purple. Third eye, purple. So what you're saying is that somehow the skull is processing the light so you see something in the third eye? Yeah, that's a psychic vibration. There's no doubt. You know the purple spectrum is the highest visible vibrational range. Has anyone told you about having a direct communication with these crystal skulls? Yes, people would say the skulls were talking to them in their minds. In essence, that's what I felt it was doing. Like if you ask a question in meditation and put your hands on the skull, the answer would come into your mind. Now, I'm not sure whether it was their own voice or they were actually hearing a voice speaking out. When Michael Campbell psychometrized the Mayan skull, he came out with a language. He was also starting to speak psychometrized the Mayan skull. He came out with a language. He was also starting to speak Mayan. I transcribed it, but I have never translated what he said. It came up with a whole series of phrases in Mayan. It could have been light language, to be honest. What's incredible about AI now is you can actually put it through. Let me go back in a minute. Veda Austin's book on languages of water. Water is quartz crystal liquid, right? You've got 75% of you, us as humans, are made up of water, quartz crystal, inherently, right? And our third eye is a quartz crystal, the pineal gland. That's my opinion. Doesn't mean I'm correct, but that's my head. And so when Veda Austin was, she'd been taking pictures of water and putting it, it's a long story. Again, I'll put the video I did with her. It was a 28-minute video of her book. I'll put it under the quartz crystal on my YouTube page on the playlist so you can check it out. But she had taken pictures of the water, and the water had images below it, right? And what she found was that no matter what the image, either the silhouette of the image would come through when she photographed the frozen water. A person met her at a fair or something, and he put her pictures through AI. When the background of the shadows, if you will, or whatever, were removed, what came through the water of the photographs she had taken was Sanskrit, cuneiform, and hieroglyphs. I'm not joking. She didn't put pictures of cuneiform language, Aramaic, or hieroglyphs. She had put an image, but on the layers of water, right? When you freeze it, apparently it retained, right? Because water, I mean, think about water. Water is constantly moving throughout this planet, from the sky, from the center of the earth. And if anyone has memory of our very, very beginnings, it's water, which is liquid quartz. And the languages came through. So I wouldn't be surprised if and the languages came through. So I wouldn't be surprised if he either spoke in Mayan or another ancient tongue. And again, they're saying Mayan because, again, they're being programmed by the fact that some of these quartz crystal skulls were found in South America. But remember, before Atlantis fell, the landmass, there might have been 3 continents or 4, but certainly not the 7. You know what I'm saying? In other words, we had a landmass that, and they talk about the migration of Asiatic people that became what we now call the Native American people. And you can see it. Okay? There was a landmass from the Ice Age. But what happened before the Ice Age? And so, okay, he came up with a whole series of phrases in Mayan. Says who? I mean, I'm not going to just eat up everything people write. Okay, I'm just going to question and go, well, what could it be? Could it be light language? Could it be another language, a Lemurian language? Could it be fucking Atlantean? The first time I saw that the amethyst and Mitchell had the skull, I felt like they were quietly observing me. There's a time of attunement that has to happen with these skulls, and after a while you connect with them. There's a period when certain people will get initial reaction to these skulls, but these aren't the deeper reactions which would come out later. It takes time to get to know the skulls, just like with people. Joshua, some people are lucky if they ever get to see one crystal skull in their whole life. I've seen 2, and I know there are others. Even just through the pictures, one can get to know the skulls. How do you feel about this? I was totally amazed. I got a hit. Boom. Okay. I just told you about Veda and how she put pictures of items beneath the water. If you have a crystal skull, or if you have an ally skull that you know, or an ally crystal, then I would direct you in seeing if you can get a picture of the Mitchell Hedges skull. That's the one I would choose, personally, me. That's the one I've always been studying. And I would put your crystal on top of it for a day. That's what I'm going to do, actually studying. And I would put your crystal on top of it for a day. That's what I'm going to do, actually. To suck up, to get as much, and to intend it. I would do four corners. I would do the four corners above and below in the room, in your garden, wherever you're going to leave it. But I would put an image of the Mitchell Hedges skull beneath my crystal, whatever it is that you think is your fucking power crystal. Hopefully you have one. If you don't, ask the universe to guide you to that crystal. Seriously, and it's not a race. Okay, this is not a fucking race. This is conscious connection with the universe and asking it for you to connect with that. Okay? And do it. Just fucking do it. What emanates. I also would go so far to be honest, as to put a glass of water, a pitcher of water in clear glass, not ceramic, not colored, in clear glass, on top of an image of, again, the Mitchell Hedges skull. Okay? And I would leave it for a day, putting a cover, cap, whatever, cloth on top of your vessel so it doesn't get dust or whatever. And I would say to it, all the images of this, all the healing qualities of this Mitchell Hedges skull, please impart it into my water. Please give it to me in water form. I have a vessel right now. I've just actually done it. I'm actually doing it as we speak. Okay? And to me, those are the rituals I vibe with. Not some weird ass fucking rituals with chickens and goats in my bathtub. Red rituals, black rituals. It's crap. Spells and shit. No. Energy, frequency, harnessing, excavation, spiritual excavation. It's not manipulation, not harming, not controlling, not owning. So that's where I'm coming from. Where are you coming from? How are you using power? Oh, and I got another restriction. Isn't that funny? Oh, God forbid we should actually learn shit that really actually matters. But no, let me talk about, Erica Kirk. That will, again, I get 100,000 people right now. It's insane. But you should be congratulating yourself that you're actually curious and you actually want to do this kind of work. You should congratulate yourself because most people don't have the bandwidth. So there's a time of attunement that has to happen with these skulls, and after a while you connect with them. Some people are lucky. I'm jumping. I was totally amazed that there was an amethyst skull when I had seen the Mayan skull, then it disappeared from our lives. I said, fine, I'm a better person. That there was an amethyst skull when I had seen the Mayan skull, then it disappeared from our lives. I said, fine, I'm a better person for having experienced it. What I found is that it's important to go beyond just observing the skulls. I found that every single person, whether they have a connection with them or not, could feel something upon touching them. I had people who were not into metaphysical and mystical things or crystals put their hands on top of the amethyst skull and say, wow, I can feel it. This is not the emperor's new clothes, okay? With the crowd saying, oh yeah, I feel this, I feel the vibe, yeah, baby, yeah. No, it's about you either feel it or you don't. If you don't feel it, and others ask yourself, are they full of shit? Remember the CIA experiment? Let me just tell you the CIA experiment, just to remind you. Okay? Is when they had 13 men. 12 of them were CIA agents, and they were testing how people are controlled by peer pressure, how easily it's done. And the guy who they picked off the street had no idea that the other 12 men were not picked from the street. I've told this story before, but I'll tell it again because it's important. On how people fucking go with shit that, what the hell. So they showed a triangle. That's all it is. It was an image of a triangle. And they asked all 12 men, what is it? A triangle. And they didn't say triangle, excuse me. A rectangle, a rectangle, a rectangle, a rectangle. Now the guy saw it. He saw that it was a fucking triangle, but everyone was saying rectangle. So for him to, the guy saw it. He saw that it was a fucking triangle, but everyone was saying rectangle. So for him to fit in, this is where the emperor's new clothes is such a great fable for children and adults that have no clue, that just keep going with the peer pressure, is he said rectangle. He said rectangle when he fucking knew it was a triangle. He knew it. And yet he went with the crowd. Mob rule, hive mentality. So when everyone's telling you, oh my God, I feel this energy of this Mayan crystal, right? I'm just kind of bringing some things up that are very important. And you trust these people. You have at least one person you know is not full of shit. And they do feel it. They really do. Okay, then that means that you need to fucking get your chakras cleared. You need to meditate. You need to be working on your chakras if you don't feel it. That's what it means. Okay? But you don't peer pressure yourself into saying something that is not true. You betray yourself in doing that. You harm yourself in doing that. So what you do is you go, oh, well, Sally's really psychic and I trust her. And Sally, you really feeling some shit? Oh my God, yeah, you don't feel it? Don't feel bad. Just go, shit, I got some work to do. I got stuff to clear up. Okay, let's go. And this is what people don't teach, and they do not talk about this. It's not about being part of the crowd. Oh, I'm metaphysical. My third eye is opened. Oh, will you open my third eye? Oh, I got my third eye opened by somebody. That's not how it works. This is why New Age is a joke. It's become a joke. And it's become a dangerous joke. It's no different than people going, the rapture. We're having the same psychosis in New Age. Trust me. It's about wisdom. It's about your own psychic powers. It's about you recognizing maybe your psychic powers have been diluted and buried, and you need to excavate it. There's no shares. It's about you recognizing maybe your psychic powers have been diluted and buried, and you need to excavate it. There's no shame in that. It's not a fucking competition. It's not a race. You see what I'm saying? And this is something I'm not seeing with New Age content creators or teachers. Because there's a subtle shaming here. Oh, you didn't feel it? Well, I felt. Well, everyone else felt it. Sally, you didn't feel that? Oh, wow. Oh, no, you're right. I do feel it now. Wow. That's intense. If these skulls could speak through you after working with them, what messages would you say that they would want to share with other people? Well, the conclusion which I came to was just in one phase of my understanding of these skulls that they are solid physical proof that we call God, what we call higher intelligence exists. There's more than just the human intelligence. It could be a human, but of a higher intelligence than earthlings. A single message that a lot of people receive was that love is the answer, that things will turn out right in the end. And positive message, a lot of people said in one sentence or phrases, the greatest feeling that I felt from them was tremendous affirmation of why I became involved in all these things in metaphysics and mysticism, that here was solid physical proof. This wasn't just other people telling me of their experiences or a direct message that, hey, this is proof, this is it, this is something more. And that when we get to know these skulls, we're going upwards. It was a positive message to me, totally positive, that these skulls were sent here to benefit us, to aid us, to let us know that there is a God, higher intelligence, higher beings. Now let's pretend just for a moment you have a possession of a crystal skull for an unlimited amount of time. What kind of research would you do on a crystal skull if you had one under these conditions? Healing was one of the primary things I felt I wanted to use them for. I would contact, and I have those contacts, a lot of people who do massage work, body work, and counseling to let them have sessions with the skull, just meditating with it or holding it to raise their own energies to improve their healing work. Then I would work with gathering the knowledge and with transcribing some of the information. I feel that the most functional thing that they could be used for now is healing, to really heal people. I mean, I could see people throwing away their crutches like they used to do, like they do in these, faith healings. And I'm serious, but I think that exposure away their crutches like they used to do, like they do in these, faith, feelings, healings. And I'm serious, but I think that exposure to the skulls can change a person's self-image. The crystal skulls could cure cancer, AIDS, and many other diseases if used properly. So healing would be my primary function for using the skulls because I have a medical background too. And then for knowledge, pure knowledge. And after that, asking them questions and writing down the answers, writing books of knowledge from the skulls. I would work day and night. That was the problem. I didn't sleep. I stayed up all night with these other people coming through day and night. I had people visiting like there was a revolving door here. I didn't sleep. I stayed up all night with these other people coming through day and night. I had people visiting like there was a revolving door here. And you never got tired or fell apart? No, I stopped eating. You settle for burnout. After a while, eventually I had to take the amethyst skull and wrap it in silk, put it back in the case, and let it sit for a while because I was burning out. But I worked 4 days straight like that, almost without sleeping or eating. I couldn't sleep at night, so I had to put it away. When I put the skull away, put it to sleep, then I could sleep. That's some power. I'm going to leave it here. I'm going to leave it here because I'm running out of battery on my phone. And hopefully you enjoyed this. And every time I have an image of a crystal skull like that or a high priestess holding a skull, you'll know that the live is about this. And I'm really happy that you guys are into this, that you found this interesting. I find a book that before I jump is, I don't know if I should go there. It's about resurrection. And it was written by Freddie Silver, who I adore. I adore this man. And oh shit. Okay. I just realized my twin read this book through his scribbles in the book. I didn't realize he had read it. Holy shit, he loved it, it looks like. Oh shit. Okay. I'm going to read you what he actually really, holy crap. Here, let me read this to you because this is okay. And I pulled this book out yesterday, just so you know. Let me read this to you because this is okay. And I pulled this book out yesterday, just so you know. What should I read first? So again, this is about the resurrection. Okay, now we know that Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary was a high. Okay, now we know that Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary was a high priestesses from the Isis temples, or we're going to call them Isis temples for now, but from the high realms of temple mysticism temples, right? Probably definitely connected to Egypt. So yeah, let's stay with Isis. I'll just go with that. And Freddie Silver confirms it, actually, come to think of it. But so we know that they understood how to resurrect. We know that Yeshua's liver was pierced, right? We understand that. But they would have had energetic healing, probably using crystals and working on the chakras and using sound or om and other seed sounds to heal. So, but I will say this to you. I'm going to read this to you right here. It is important to clarify that these apparitions were not evil, merely unfamiliar, and the unfamiliar elicits a natural reaction in the human mind. It is important to clarify that these apparitions were not evil, merely unfamiliar, and the unfamiliar elicits a natural reaction in the human mind. The Neoplatonist philosopher Proclus Lykias, himself an initiate, explains, in all initiations and mysteries, the gods exhibit many forms of themselves, and sometimes indeed our unfigured light of themselves is held forth to the view. Sometimes this light is figured according to human form, and sometimes it proceeds into different shapes. Some of the figures are not gods and excite alarm. No wonder the mysteries were secrets, were known form, and sometimes it proceeds into different shapes. Some of the figures are not gods and excite alarm. No wonder the mysteries were secrets, were known only to a handful of custodians. Did you hear that? Few have the nerve to undergo such an ordeal, and given their responsibilities in a situation that could go disastrously wrong with the potential for madness and even the possibility of death, it's no surprising that techniques were zealously protected from the ignorant. He underlined that, and yet the benefit of the penetrating belief Proclus himself described how, having overcome the fear of the unknown, the prize that awaits is magnificent. I'll leave it there. I think that was brilliant. This is from the book, The Lost Art of Resurrection by Freddie Silver. All right, my loves, it was great. I'll upload this video on YouTube. Follow me on YouTube, Sacred Intimacy Tarot. Follow me there. Please share this live. I think these whole quartz crystal, hopefully I'm reading it well. If I'm not reading it well, I really do appreciate your constructive critique so that I can give you a better experience, because my whole goal is to take these out-of-print books and share with you what I'm studying, why I'm studying it, and why these are important, in my opinion, to ascension consciousness and to co-create with the universe, and realizing our allies, quartz crystals, the living crystal of water, which you actually embody. Sending you much love on your journey. Namaste. Be well.